guys, I'm with Jason Green. He's a legendary bass player from Johannesburg.
By way of Pretoria.
By way of Pretoria.
Originally, yes.
Originally from Pretoria. So where did you study music?
I studied music at the TUT. It was called Pretoria Technikon at that stage. I studied bass with Mark Doobie. It probably gave me the most important music lesson of my life.
What was that?
He didn't teach me what to teach him. Well, no, that's rather... He wanted me to show him what I needed to know.
Okay.
So he didn't walk into every lesson and say, okay, today we're going to learn this, this, and that. He would come in and say, what do you need to learn today? And the onus was then left on me to find out and read and discover. There was obviously a basic syllabus that what he taught, but he also made me work a lot on my reading, which later on in life, ironically enough, has come to serve me very well, because even in this modern day of tabs and internet, reading is still a required skill for a freelance musician. So I studied with him for 3 years. There was no degree course back in '95, unfortunately. And then I joined the school of angry music directors.
Who was your first angriest music director?
I did a few with, well, I should probably not mention names in this day of the Poppy Act.
We can always bleep it out.
Yeah, there was a famous booker. His name rhymes with coleslaw.
Ah, yes.
Okay, who would book you for a gig, moan at you like you were the lowest form of living tissue known to man in the rehearsal, scream at you in front of the client, and then not pay you. Yeah.
The best kind of musical
Exactly.
director, yes.
You know, so he not only gave you life skills, he gave you coping mechanisms. I learned a lot from Heidi Edler.
Yeah.
After I graduated, I did a Rocky Horror show with her, and I tried to put 3 years of Jacko into Time Warp, which really doesn't work, just so you know. Yeah, exactly, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did Rocky Horror recently, and I just realized that some music needs to be played like it's written.
Yes.
It's great to have chops. I've got nothing against that. But if you're not playing the music...
But how would one cope playing that kind of music if you have lots of chops?
I think there's phases in everyone's life. I think when you're younger, you're full of adrenaline and vinegar, and you've got something to prove. The older I've gotten, the more I realize that no matter who you're in the world, there's no best bass player. There might be a best bass player for this music, and a best bass player for that, and a best soloist, and a best this. But Victor Wooten is great, but so is John Deacon, as we were saying earlier. So
yes.
Victor Wooten is amazing for technique, and sometimes I feel lately in the YouTube generation, there's too much of an emphasis on that.
Yeah, everyone wants to chop and
everyone wants to solo,
groove.
and then when it comes to playing, then sometimes that gets boring, and there's fills and stuff. And again, the older you grow, the more you realize this works there, and you get hired for knowing the difference.
Yes,
in my opinion.
I think that's what experience teaches you, though, is when to chop and when not to chop, and
Exactly.
when to bring out which chops. You know, there's rock chops and there's jazz chops and there's R&B chops.
Exactly, and none are irrelevant. It's just, and I do think, if I can be honest, as a working session musician in this country, you have to have all three or all four genres, because at some point at a recording session you're going to be asked to play an achy breaky heart bass line.
Yes.
And you need to know as a bass player that you're going
and so forth.
Yes, so you need to know that. You need to know if they want I feel good feel.
Yes.
And you need to know, make it sound like Queen, make it sound like gospel, make it sound jazzy. Do a walking line. For example, something simple like, seeing who's on the topic of jazz, the Michael Bublé type jazz walking bass line that works in a big band vocal format is totally different from a bebop, piano trio, or instrumentalist jazz walking bass line. You need to know that your chromatical notes are going to clash more with the vocal line, and if there's lots of brass going on, where to not place jazzy notes.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And I also think in a trio situation, you've got a little bit more space to play with.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So all of this is just to basically say, when you're young, you have a point to prove. We all do. I had. And I dare say I might have lost a few gigs because I was too busy, or not getting invited back in a hurry. You know, kind of moved down the session player list simply for that. And as I grew older, you prune a bit. You realize that chops are good, slapping's great, but you use it on 1 of 5 gigs, and it's usually only in the bass solo. So everybody practicing double thumping, it's great. It's bass gymnastics. It works awesome at a music shop when you're trying out a bass that you're going to play country on. I've done it, so I know it happens. But learn to be a well-rounded musician. Learn a bit of everything. And I say that in South Africa. I know that other markets are different. There are players in Europe and America, for example, that are specialists. And they can afford to be because the market is big enough. If you want to be a working musician in South Africa, 3 things. Learn to read. Learn to play in different styles authentically. Have a good instrument that can aid you in that. And thirdly, and most importantly, don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
Yes.
Yes. I think
That's possibly the most important thing you can tell people.
It's the most important thing. Because you could be an okay musician, but a great guy to work with. As long as you can play the part, you'll get booked again.
And let's be honest, a lot of music, I've worked with you a lot in barnyard type shows and even in a few corporate events and that type of thing. A lot of the music isn't difficult.
No. You don't need to be the most burning jazz musician or gospel musician.
It can help.
But it will help, absolutely. But you don't need it. You don't need to be.
It's not the final straw. I would say this. Ironically enough, playing music is more about how you make other people feel.
Yes.
And that could be with your groove. It can also be with your personality. So I know the soft skills, timekeeping, personality, keeping your mood swings in bay if you suffer from that. Being nice to people. Those are all soft skills that aren't taught as much as modal skills, but will probably employ you beyond just technical knowledge.
It's some profound knowledge right there.
Yeah, I'll send you the invoice for that. We didn't discuss that before.
No, we haven't discussed payment yet.
Yeah, exactly.
So should we take a question? Okay, first question is from Marshall.
Have you ever considered changing your surname to another colour? Because purple just has so many more dark frequencies.
It does, but I like my name because it kind of reflects that cash money needs to be paid. Yeah.
Good answer.
In South Africa, it's the 10 rand, but I like to think of it according to the American greenback. Yeah. I try. All my invoices are in dollars. So anyway,
I have never considered changing my surname to another color because my surname isn't a color. It's more, guile is more like a lack of colour. It's to be hidden.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you're colourblind.
I didn't know you could be guileful. You can be guileless, can't you?
I don't know. I think you could be guileless.
Anyway.
Yes. Anyway,
whatever it is,
something to think about. Leave it in the comments. Can you be guile-free, guileless, or just...
extra guile?
Or be guiled.
Vegan guile.
That's my brother. I think we have a question from...
we have a caller.
Yes, we have a caller.
So, what would you say is your most influential bass players? Obviously, it changes from
from genre to genre
and whatever, and tone-wise and technique-wise, it's also different.
It's interesting. Yeah, I did a thing recently for JD Custom for their Jam Jar series, and they asked me the same question, and I think I have 3 or 4 main ones. The first one I had was Cliff Burton, because obviously back in those days, and I'm talking 1989, 1990 in South Africa, you battled to find Metallica records. Yeah, it was a big tape trading underground because the records were, the covers were naughty and people didn't like that. So, I heard For Whom the Bells Toll, which I believe that. Yeah, and I mean, I didn't believe it was bass at first. Doesn't sound like bass, And then, then came Anesthesia from Kill 'Em All, and then there was just this larger-than-life personality that didn't double the guitar in metal. He came up with his own vibe, and played with his fingers and wore bell bottoms, and yeah. I remember going to CNA on Saturdays to look at pictures because there's no internet, of course, in 94, 95. So I'm looking at pictures in the magazine of this crazy guy that everyone still remembered because he had just died recently. So he was still, he hasn't not been forgotten, but the Metallica's been through 2-3 bass players if you count Bob Rock, which I don't.
No.
Yeah,
Definitely not.
So there was that. I remember going to a gospel concert when I was my first year of studying music. So that was 1994. And I saw Abraham Laboriel live, and he was, he was front and center of the stage, which was unusual for bass. He was dancing around, and he was doing these ridiculous solos, that weird two-handed tapping, slapping thing of his, the strumming thing, and people loved it, which I thought was great, because the bass could now not just be bass.
It's now becomes the forefront of a concert experience.
Exactly right,
Yeah.
and I mean. The audience was cheering as much for the bass solo as they were for the drum solo and stuff. And I mean, if you listen to his playing, it's not technically immaculate, but the groove and the mistakes and all of that, they just make it happen. So that stayed with me for a long time. I still have his signature from that concert laminated on my wall to remind me to keep practicing, because he says there, keep practicing.
Yes.
So I listen to that advice daily. Then I went to study music, and obviously then it was the Paul Chambers, because one of the first songs I learned was all blues. So then you hear a melody on double bass, and then I try to get as much of his stuff with Herbie Hancock as well, and hearing him not just do walking lines but do interesting bass lines that deviated from the standard jazz thing at the time. Of course, Jacko.
Why not?
Yeah.
It's a given.
You can't not study music and not hear about Jacko, and not just as a musician, but also, unfortunately, as a cautionary tale. Someone whose life could have been so much more.
Yes.
I guess you hear the same thing with Hendrix, with Mozart. All the geniuses that died soon, maybe before they'd reached their next level.
Yeah, it's often those eccentric types that go down that path.
Yeah. And I suppose there's a little bit of romance in the notion of being a bright light that burns out quickly.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying being 40. Yeah.
You're 40 now.
No, I'm 42.
42 now.
So I'm enjoying being older. I think if I died at 32 or 27 or whatever that famous club is.
You wouldn't have gotten nearly as good as you are now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You wouldn't have got the same life experience, the same music experience.
Yeah, I could have done without maybe an ex-stepmother. But other than that, everything's been great. After Jacko came Marcus Miller. I mean, you can't not hear any contemporary and jazz music from the 90s onwards and not hear that slap tone. But I just want to point out something with the Jacko thing and the Marcus Miller thing. A lot of guys get very much into those tones, but I find that you can't just copy someone else's tone if you're not playing their music, if that makes any sense. So what I mean by that is, Marcus Miller's tone is very much a lot of treble, a lot of bass boosted on that Shadowski onboard preamp, with an implication of a mid-cut, which is amazing when he's slapping. But most bass players, when they do that tone, they disappear in a mix.
Yeah.
They so will.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned as I got more experience with tone and stuff is learn your frequencies as well. So it's great learning Marcus Miller licks, and I mean I don't know nearly enough of them, but also learn how to make your bass cut through a mix.
Yes.
Yeah. After that came a bunch of other people. I started hearing Robert Trujillo when you're still in Infectious Grooves playing the funk punk stuff, Flea obviously, if you wanted to get into some unorthodox loud bass playing, the usual bass game when Victor Wooten came along. But I would say if I had two overwhelming influences, it would be Cliff Burton and then Marcus Miller.
So complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
Well, my two favorite bands to this day, well, it's a toss-up. It's Megadeth, Metallica, and ABBA. Now, if you want to hear something interesting,
I get that.
take my word for it. Go listen to the original ABBA bass lines. Amazing, melodic, grooving, difficult bass lines. And everyone goes, it's ABBA. They're amazing bass lines. And if you get over your, because everyone goes, ABBA, really? listen to that music. And
Arrangement, songwriting,
vocal
Yeah,
ability,
yeah.
yeah. But I mean, really listen to even a silly little bass line like Money, 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 where he's doubling the vocal line, hitting it up an octave, and then sliding down. It's just ridiculous.
We were doing a Queen and Abbott show recently with
Yes.
a bass player who quite obviously didn't check out the lines.
Sure.
And there was one line in particular that really got me, was Dancing Queen.
Yes. You mean the whole...
Yes, that's exactly it. It's simple.
Yeah.
It's simple, but it just creates that vibe. And
Yeah.
if that bass line isn't there, the song doesn't sound like the song.
Yes.
So I took that snippet I took a snippet of that song and boosted all the frequencies highlighting the bass. I said, go, check this out, please.
Yeah.
You can hear it now.
Yeah.
And he came back and he played it, and then suddenly the song came to
Yeah.
life.
If I could just take a little tangent on that exact thing. A lot of younger bass players, when you have to learn older music, now the reason I bring this up is because in this country, there's a lot of money to be made in theatre work, be it the Barnyard Theatre, be it some touring theatre show. I have two students now working with Showtime, and the one is playing the Whitney Houston show, the other one's playing the Queen and Michael Jackson show. And the important thing about them keeping that gig is that you have to go back and listen to everything. So let's have a look. I was playing this the other day in the show I'm doing, ironically, at another one, Bites the Dust. Possibly the least sexy part of bass lines, and everybody goes to sleep, is note duration. So if we think of another one, Bites the Dust, I usually put it on the back pickup to give it a bit more, a bit more of that Music Man growl. If you play it,
The song is gone. There's no more
exactly,
song.
the groove comes from. And then the B section. So it's important as bass players to learn your scales, learn your technique and stuff, but also, and this is what, in my opinion, differentiates a great bass player from a bass holder. Bass holders are those people that generally play in bands with people they know. By that I mean they don't get freelance work, and they're nice guys. They generally keyboardists or guitarists that couldn't cut it on their own instrument.
Yes.
That's just
The worst guitarist in the band gets the bass player gig.
You know, unfortunately, I see that a lot in the Afrikaans music scene, but I'm not bitter. But the point is this: a good bass player will make sure that his notes work with a song. It's not just phoning in the bass line.
Yeah.
So the point is, you as a musician, as a session musician, you need to be able to arrive at a gig. The booker, quite often, I'll be booked by people like yourself for a Barnyard show, or every now and then with Mark Beeling or Emmanuel Castas or a few of the other artists I work with, and they'll send me a set list, and I'll see you at 7. And it's up to me to arrive there with the right shirt on, but the set list ready.
Yes.
With the tones ready, so that when we're playing, I don't know, Heaven is a Place on Earth, I'm playing with that tone, but when we move to what was one of the Ed Sheeran songs, I can affect my tone accordingly, and I don't need the sound guy to do it. Yeah, or if you want to do perfect, exactly, the old thing, you always pass mode, or everyone's favorite, Crazy Little Thing Called Love. And also just also just a little bit of advice to freelance musicians: learn those songs, because you're going to be playing a lot of that. You're going to be playing perfect. You're going to be playing Simply the Best
A lot.
Yeah.
I think I played that song at every gig for about 7 years.
Yeah.
Solid. So let's go to another question.
Yeah.
Would you rather be part of a famous international show production like We Will Rock You, or join an international famous band like Metallica?
I think to answer that, I definitely want to be in the band, simply because I would rather invent something than interpret.
Yes.
I don't always get that opportunity, I must be honest. A lot of my work is learning other people's lines. But if I were given the option and I could be known for creating something from scratch and having my thing on it, I'd join the band rather than the tribute show, hands down.
I would also prefer to be in the band. I just don't think I'd like to be in Metallica, because then I would have to work with Lars Ulrich.
Yeah, I also wouldn't want to be a bass player in Metallica or a drummer in Spinal Tap because
No.
yeah,
Have a
an explosion on
yes,
stage.
or
yeah.
a tragic gardening accident.
Yes, yeah.
Sure,
Ooh,
someone
was,
else
I think that was a
involved.
reference to Jeff Porcaro.
I think.
Ouch.
Yeah, not too soon, no.
Yeah, no.
When did Jeff Porcaro die? It was
He died gardening.
Yes, I know, but when? It was
Uh,
90.
It was after Spinal Tap, though.
Yes,
yeah.
1991.
Early 90s.
Yes,
So.
somewhere around there.
What is your feel on the rule of threes? Quick, cheap, and good. But we all know you can only have two. If you applied it to your life as a session musician, as a product as well as in the search for tone.
I know there's a famous saying that says you should never get a discount on a lawyer or a prostitute. So, I guess with the rule of threes, what was it? Quick, easy, or
Quick, cheap, and good. But that doesn't necessarily mean that a cheap prostitute won't be good.
sure, but a cheap lawyer never is.
That's true.
Yeah.
But they won't be quick.
Yeah, look, both ways you're getting screwed.
Yeah.
So, I would say in the long run, I'm not quite sure how to apply that to
Search for tone.
a search for tone or a thing. I will say this, however, the older I get, the more I like the P bass sound. Now, to me, a P bass, I kind of snicker under my breath a little bit at all these American custom shop P basses. When, if we're very honest, the original P basses from the 51 prototype through to the early 60s pre-CBS takeover Fenders are badly made. The
Yes.
wood wasn't great. They were assembled rather ramshackly, and they're not supposed to be boutique.
No, they're not
And-
at all.
Yes, and to me,
But you're paying boutique prices for most of them.
which is unfortunate, and especially when you have flame maple this and you have an active preamp. Some basses, like the P bass, in my opinion, should be cheap and nasty. So I've sometimes heard great results for a P bass sound out of a Court that costs $2,000, and then an American custom shop P bass that had a chambered body and that just didn't cut the mustard because it didn't have the grit. What I mean by that is the P bass is supposed to be a bit furry on the edges and a bit, and therein is how it cuts through the mix.
Much like a cheap prostitute.
Yes, they can be furry and a bit rough on the edges. I would like to say that I have no knowledge of this area. Yeah, moving along. I'm going purely allegorically on what a cheap prostitute probably looks and smells like. Sounds like. So anyway, back to the topic at hand. The P bass.
That's what the cheap prostitutes say.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you only paid for an hour. You ain't getting any more. A P bass is supposed to be a gnarly instrument, like a telly. Yeah, a telly, if it's too pretty, I think loses some of its soul. A jazz bass, on the other hand, by its very definition, having the two pickups and slightly more advanced blending options, can be a bit more hi-fi. But I think sometimes you get a different sound. On that topic, if I'm playing a P bass, I don't feel like playing a lot of notes.
No.
The very tone itself lends itself to being a bit more. Whereas as soon as you start adding in a second pickup, you immediately start getting a bit more.
Well, there's a bit more warmth in there. It makes you want to play more notes.
Yeah. Either way, so as to answer that question, I think in some cases, don't spend too much on a P bass. Get one that growls and is a little ugly and looks like it's been dragged behind a pickup truck, and you'll probably find an amazing instrument.
I just recently did a video on the Zoom 505 and how well it could work in a mix. And they're quick, they're cheap, but they're definitely not good. So you're definitely not going to get all three.
Yeah.
I think that's the moral of the story.
Exactly. And there are things, and we've also got to remember one thing to be very careful about these days. I like bass multiple effects. That's why I use the Zoom B3N. Simply because it is quick, it is cheap, but it's not nasty. It's clean. There's virtually no signal to noise. I don't have to spend all night wondering which cable connection has come loose. There's very little ground hum. That is, various venues have the difference on that. And most importantly, it works virtually bulletproof. I had a friend recently spill his coffee on his, wiped the screen down, it started and played. So
Probably played better with the caffeine.
yeah, I think you got
injection.
more that Van Halen Brown sound. But the point is, sometimes you're not paying more doesn't give you a better tone.
Yes.
Ironically, most of our coveted instruments, the 50s to 70s, say for example, instruments, the Gibsons and the Fenders and the Rickenbackers even, weren't necessarily well made. They were just made at that time. And some of the funk comes from the fact that they're fighting each other, the wood's not going, it weighs a ton, it's not
Well,
practical.
there's no consistent quality between each instrument.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's not all this mass-produced,
Yeah.
machine-made stuff. So there's always going to be some sort of flaws.
Yeah,
Some sort of flaws in the instrument, and that kind of gives it its character.
exactly. I mean, let's take one of the most iconic modern instruments, and our esteemed guest know all about this, the Marcus Miller jazz bass. It's based on a mid-70s 3-bolt L-series jazz bass, which at the time was one of the most hated jazz versions. And he chopped it open, put in a Shadowski preamp, and suddenly everyone had to have a 70s jazz bass. But up until then, the expert knowledge had been, that's a cheap and crap bass. Fender didn't even have the bother to put in 3 bolts. The neck shifts. It's heavy because it's now got an ash, not an alder body. But in the right hands, the Mutt became one of the most copied bass tones around.
Yes, exactly.
So again, yeah.
I have a question. Don't know if it's tone deaf related or lack of music education or whatever, but to me, guitars in drop tuning, B, C, and G, still sound not as low as E. Maybe because in relation to a scale, E is always lower, but to me, a song in drop C still doesn't sound low to me. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Listen to an old song, then drop the tuning and play it again. The older version still sounds lower, even if a note isn't low in terms of pitch or whatever. You know what I mean? Is this a thing?
It is a thing. It is actually a thing. And it all comes down to the fundamental frequency of the note. So if you, let's say you play E on the 7th fret of the A string, which is the guitar E.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's load up a frequency analyzer here. And we see here, the fundamental frequency is sort of landing at around about 70 hertz.
Okay.
So now, the way the human human hearing works is that we've got a 20 to 20,000 hertz hearing range, but that doesn't mean that we're going to hear all frequencies equally.
Yes.
Yes. So we're going to have a slight drop off going towards the 20, and then a slight drop off going up to the 20,000, and then a peak at about 1 and 2.
1K,
Yeah, 1 and 2K. So as you start moving down, so let's take that E again. Here. Now let's play a C. See, the fundamental starts moving down. You start going down
Moving
towards
down
you start moving down towards the point where we
Yeah.
start losing frequencies.
Yes.
Yes.
That's an A.
Yes. Now it's dropping down even further. And you start hearing the fundamental, or you start hearing the harmonic overtones more than the fundamental.
Right. Yes.
Which is why it sounds higher.
Yeah. I would also say there's two things. You'll notice a lot of bass players love the low B. Now, to give it a lot of energy, you need to pluck it quite hard and maybe EQ it quite a bit. What you'll find, though, is on stage in a mix, that can disappear. And it might not seem as present as notes on the E string simply because that frequency has been eaten up
Yes.
by everything from the construction of the room, the curtains around you, the size of your amp speaker. So when you're standing in front of it, much like you'd be listening to music, very few people listen to music at home miles away from the source. Some of the bass frequencies, they haven't completed their wave cycle yet, so you're missing it. You move away, for example, if you're walking to a party from a block down the road, you only hear the bass frequencies.
Yes.
Because the high frequencies don't have enough energy
Yeah.
to travel that far. The closer you get, the more the highs and the mids start getting added to the
If you
mix.
look at the way waves work, the lower the frequency is, the
longer the
yeah,
wave.
the longer the wave, and
From fraction
Yeah.
to rarefaction.
yeah, that's the one. That's what
Yeah.
I'm looking for.
So, maybe what you're hearing is our ears' tendency to emphasize certain frequencies, and sometimes, depending on the source that you're listening to it on, you're losing that low end. For example, I can barely hear the bass on my cell phone speakers, but you put in a little set of those cheap earphones in your ears, your whole head becomes the resonant chamber for the bass,
Yes.
and suddenly the bass is back.
Yeah.
So maybe the answer to your question is it depends on the source.
Yeah.
They're there. Your ear is just favoring certain frequencies, and some things get
But
lost.
it is actually something I want to do a video on, the whole fundamental frequency
Yes,
versus
yeah.
the harmonic overtones. It's actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of DJs, PV has this whole generator called the Cosmos subharmonic generator, which literally takes the subharmonic note, chops off the fundamental, and just adds the upper frequency.
Yes.
So your ear thinks it's hearing more bass, but if you look at it on the speaker, and certainly if you listen to the sound coming out of into the amp, there's no more bass added.
Yes.
It's called psychoacoustics.
Yeah.
Your ear perceives the upper harmonics as being the lower harmonics.
Yes.
DJs and stuff have been doing that for years, which is why a lot of live DJ sets sound like you're getting punched in the gut, and they're not using a much bigger set.
No, what happens
PAs.
is it's a psychoacoustic thing. They're pushing the first harmonic or the
Yes,
second harmonic.
which the ear grabs onto.
Yes, exactly.
And immediately fills in the lows.
Yeah. But also they're pushing the hell out of the sub frequencies as well.
Yeah.
Which your ear's not really going to hear.
Yeah. But also remember, DJs aren't real musicians, and they should be ostracized at every opportunity.
Yes. Because they took our gerbs!
They took our
Took our
gerbs!
gerbs! Oh, why pay a 5-piece band when you can pay one DJ to push
Yeah,
play?
and pay him more.
Yes.
Anyway, we digress.
Well, they can pay a DJ the same as they'd pay a 2-piece.
Well, I
Or
fear that these days they're paying DJs more than bands to play the band's music, but that's
Don't
another
tell
topic.
me things like this. I don't want to hear that.
Especially at weddings.
La 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 la!
I guess we could flip the tables here. Jason, would you play with fingers, and Jason, would you play with a pick? Who do you think will fare better in that situation? Prove it.
I'll go first. I could play with a pick. I have in the past. I've never recorded with a pick because I'm not.
Are you telling us to swap instruments, or are you
Yeah.
telling us to...
I don't know.
Because I could play with my fingers.
Yeah, look, let's put it this way. There is a lot of technique involved in holding the pick. I don't play the pick a lot. If I have to, I can. It's not something I'm particularly proud of, so I certainly wouldn't want to go public with it. However, having said that, I find that when you play the bass with the pick, you firstly cut off a lot of the low frequencies just by... Can I borrow your pick quickly? Do you have one?
I'll just wipe my mouth juice.
Well, never mind. What I'll do is I'll just, if you play it like this, if you're going versus,
Yeah.
you've cut off, by definition, a lot of the low frequency information. Secondly, and possibly most importantly, there's only a certain amount of ways that a small pick can affect a bass string. So, for example, I find it very difficult to hear accents or a lot of articulation differences with the pick. Having said that, there are guys like from the 70s, good old Joe Osborne, with on every hit you ever heard from the 70s, to modern guys like Bobby Vega that are great with the pick. I'm not either of them. So I would say Jason would possibly fare better with fingers than I would a pick at such short notice. But I think...
playing...
Yeah, guitarists do that. But I will say this, guitarists, there's a difference between when you pluck the bass string like a guitar string, you get that tone. When you pluck it like a bass player, you get a fuller tone.
Yeah.
So even though it seems like there's one thing going on, there's a lot more to it. Like everything in music. A master, and I'm by certainly no means saying I'm a master, but a master musician will make the simple look difficult. Or the difficult look simple. Yeah.
Okay, we got one more question from the audience.
So, bass lines that influenced your playing in general and kind of, I want to say, inspired or...
I mean, yeah, that's a tough question because...
Influenced.
Yeah. I'd have to say, when it came back to it, I loved the kind of high versus low contrast, or back to good old Who the Bells Toll from Master of Puppets. Yeah, something like that really stood out, and then, albeit that was doubling the guitar, even his tone rose above. So I mean, that would be one of the first ones. Ironically, growing up in the 90s, you heard the radio wherever you went. A simple song like Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. That's a great bass line. That doesn't necessarily double the guitar. It's its own thing. And then in the chorus...
Well, play the verse bass line with 1, 2, 3, 4.
guitar changes. See, so the bass line is very integral to that sound, and it's not always based on the guitar thing. Ironically enough, just playing those songs again, you know, everyone wants you, if you play bass, to play. John Deacon, simple bass lines. But without those songs, I mean, that two-note bass line elevated him above the place of being a bass player to a bass composer. Thus, Vanilla Ice tried to rip it off, and they had to pay John Deacon money just for waking up that day, because his bass line was so emblematic to the song that without it, they could legitimately argue that song wouldn't work. Then we get the good old, you know, when I really got into metal was obviously one of my influences I got earlier, Steve Harris, yeah. And then we had the... Yeah, the good old 16-note gallop. Aces High, where he's playing chords, you know, bass players like that. Then, of course, we have, you know, Teen Town by Jacka. Yeah, every bass player when he heard that was like, there's nothing going on. The keyboards are holding whole notes, and the bass line's playing the melody. 2.